Hello, welcome back to Tales of Laughter review of the One Piece live action series. I'm going to be reviewing today episode 6. Episode 6 is a really important episode because it concludes the Baratie arc. In this episode, what we see is the Baratie being ambushed by the Arlong pirates and Arlong himself. We also see Sanji join the crew, while other crew members, namely Nami, is leaving the crew. So a lot goes on here. The first thing that stuck out to me in this episode is that I really like Zephyr. I really like his character, how he is emoting, how he adapted that character or interpreted that character, the actor who's playing Zephyr. I thought that was pretty cool. I also like how he looks. I think that's pretty cool. I think his mustache is insane, but I like it anyway. And I really feel like he's a chef. I feel like he's a chef. I feel like I believe his whole backstory. Everything's great about it. Luffy here, I really like the Luffyisms. The silliness, the weird things he says. And I think that really works for him. In this episode, we also have Sanji going back in time. So we're looking at a flashback of young Sanji and how he met Zeph. And if you don't know, in this continuity in the lore, Sanji was a member of a restaurant boat ship thing. And he was cooking there. And then that boat was attacked by the Red Leg pirates, captained by Red Leg Zeph, which turned into Chef Zeph, because after that happened, he quit pirating. But before that happened, Sanji and he were trapped on a deserted rock for an extended period of time, months even. And so that's what happened, and that's how they began their amazing journey together. And I won't spoil the rest because Zeph made a very important sacrifice to his young ward. So one of the things I noted here is that I really like how committed young Sanji was. He was really giving it acting wise. He committed to everything he said. He committed to everything in his scenes. I thought that was great. These scenes definitely deserved more than flashbacks. I feel like it felt like its own little story. It didn't feel like just a flashback. So I really liked how much they invested into those scenes. That was really cool for me. In this episode, we also see a little later on Garp being confronted by Mihawk, and then Mihawk was like, I'm not capturing your grandson for you, and Garp loses it. And Mad Garp is great. He's hilarious. It really works for him. Although in this series, he comes off more as unhinged than comical, but I still think it works and it's enjoyable to see. Going back to Sanji's flashback, I think he has a really good backstory, among the best in the Straw Hats. Not because it's the most tragic necessarily, but because it's the most dynamic, in my opinion. They're on the boat, and then they're on the island, and then go from the island to the restaurant, and then it's just so many pieces to that backstory, and I think that's really cool, and they depict it very well here. One thing that I noticed on my first run through that I still agree with now is that looking at young Sanji, he's a little round, and in the story, they're trapped on a rock for months, and he doesn't look as gaunt as he probably should. And so that bothered me a little bit. I wish there was a way for them to make young Sanji look more gaunt when those months go by and he ran out of food. That would have done something for me. But he still looks rather healthy. And perhaps they could have shot it differently. And I think that's another problem with the way that they always do these close-up shots. You can't really hide anything that way. And so he really looks just as healthy as he was before. And I really wish they had just pulled back a little bit, made him look a little bit more gaunt, shot it from different angles perhaps. What they did do is they made his shirt a little bit bigger, I believe, to make it seem like he had lost a lot of weight. But ultimately, it just looks like a slightly bigger shirt. They could have done a little bit more to make him seem a little bit more gaunt and distressed. I don't know if they could have. Yeah, they could have. They could have. They could have done something with the makeup, done some contouring around his cheekbones to make them look more set in around his eyes. They could have done a little bit more for me. I think they just made his cheeks reddened because maybe he's sunburnt, which makes sense, but he was still looking a little bit too healthy for me. Otherwise, it really was a great series of scenes and a really great backstory and flashback. They are also making hints and foreshadowing for season 3. So I think that's really, really cool because they're talking about things that should be happening in the series of episodes that is essentially the Alabasta arc. So that's great. They already did that with Baroque Works in earlier episodes. Now, after rewatching Arlong Park, the racism is there. So I rewatched the anime. The racism is there. It's so slight that you almost miss it, but it is there. And I think that they grabbed hold of that and added it into this live action adaptation with good effect. I think that was good that they did that. I think it worked for a motivation for that character to make that very clear. It's not better than the main series, but I think it worked for this live action situation that's going on. Zeph and Shanji, they definitely have feels going on. I really like their interactions. I like the emotional aspect of what they have. It's really cool. It's very emotive. It's very powerful. I like it. You got a dad and a son action going on. I feel it really well. Really strong. I really wish there was slightly better direction on the Arlong Luffy fight. One critique that I have of really all of Luffy's fights is that I really don't like him falling down and then struggling to get up. I don't like that for Luffy. Luffy is a character that when you knock him down, he's immediately back up on his feet. He doesn't stay down unless he's about to be out. So if this is the second to last blow that Luffy is going to get, he's really tired at that point. But if this is the first blow in the battle, he's not taking a long time to get up. He's getting up immediately and coming at you. That's the kind of character Luffy is in his fight scenes. So when they directed it with Iñaki kind of stumbling up and he's like, oh man, you hit me hard. I'm like, no, Luffy, he gets up right away. And that's what I didn't really like about the direction. So I really wish that they had done better there with that specific thing. And I hope that they do that in the future. It's really not a great look for Luffy to be, slowly getting up. He's supposed to be this super animated guy. And I really wish that they would make that very clear. The only time I want to see him struggle to get up is when it's really the very end of the battle and he gets hit particularly hard by something. And so that's my critique of that fight. It was okay. Needed better direction in my opinion. I wouldn't have had Nami address Luffy as much as she did. She didn't address him a lot, but she did address him more than I would have liked. I think the fact that Nami kind of left without saying anything created more motive for Luffy to go and find her. So I think it would have been more effective if Nami said next to nothing to Luffy when she betrayed him. She should have just only addressed Arlong. And I think that would have been a little bit more effective than how they wrote it. So one thing that I did not like so much in this episode was Zeph. We don't really know the extent of his power, but Zeph very well could be more powerful than Arlong is at his peak, especially because Zeph himself was a captain and was captaining on the Grand Line. So I don't like necessarily him being blown back. I wish they would have just kept him out of the fight. I feel like what they could have done was give that punch or whatever that blew Zeph back to his chef, who was the black guy who was also part of the Baratier. That would have given him something to do and would also keep Zeph from looking weak, in my opinion. So, I don't know. I wasn't a super big fan of that. Didn't like it very much. I also like how Luffy feels responsible for everything, even though he doesn't show it. So I think that's a really important part of who Luffy is as a character. He feels responsible for everything because he wants so much, because he's taking all these people along on his journey. So when Zoro gets hurt, he feels kind of responsible for him, even though he may not be able to change it. He needs to ensure, because his dream is so strong, that everybody who's coming with him stays with him. And so that's really important to Luffy. He takes things personally, even though he doesn't show it. So I liked how he was depicted in this episode. The last thing that you really see in this episode, and really the last thing that I would like to critique, is Sanji's goodbye to Zeph. I thought it was not as epic as it could have been. In the anime, what we see is Sanji looking up to Zeph and saying to him that he appreciates everything. He's bowing his head. He's crying profusely. And the rest of the Baratier staff is seeing him off, because even though they are a bunch of cooks, they really function as a pirate crew the way they're so tough. And so I would have loved to see something shot a little bit more like that. In the live action, you have Sanji looking down to Zeph, which to me doesn't really work. He's already on the boat and he's looking down to him, but he really should be looking up to him because he's his father figure. He's his surrogate father. He's the person who's been taking care of him, looking up to him, and he's been looking up to him for years and years at this point. So I didn't really like the way that was shot, with him looking down on him, even though he was saying some of the same things. I think that could have been worked around a little bit. Logistically, not sure how that would work, but I would not have Zeph be lower than Sanji when he said all these things. And that's my review of episode 6 of the One Piece live action series. Pretty good episode. I would give this one, I want to say an 8.5. I really like how the characters are interacting with each other. There's a lot of emotional stuff going on. I like the backstory with Zeph and Sanji. Really great stuff, really great framing. I feel that they really loved each other. The way that Sanji jumped in to save Zeph when he was attacked, it was very strong. So I really liked it. Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you'll check me out in episode 7. Please check out the One Piece live action series from Netflix, and I'll see you soon.